All right, we'll just let a couple more people in here, and then we'll get started. On what we're going to start, I have no idea. This is obviously the first one of these that I've ever run that is kind of open forum. And by that I mean anything's in play. Any question you want to put in play is in play. If you got something that's been sticking it to you a little bit and you want to try to cover it, maybe I can help you through it. Something like that. We'll do this as kind of first come, first serve. I was kind of hoping people would write in some questions ahead of time, and I had 2 or 3 people that did it, but not that many people did it. But as long as you guys are okay with that, we'll just take them ad hoc here. And I will caution you ahead of time. If I need to do a demonstration or you want a demonstration of something and I'm not set up to do it, it may take a little time to get set up to do it. So just be patient with that. I think probably, unless it just becomes too much of a huge deal, when I go back and edit the recording for the repost, I'll try to edit out all the setup time so it's a little more concise and a little easier to watch on demand. So, all right. So I guess the way we'll do this is if you've got a topic or you've got something that you want to cover or you want answered, or you want me to address, just remember, free advice is worth every penny that you spend on it. So, but I'll take first come, first serve here. Probably the best way to do this is use the hand raising mechanism in your feed down there. I think it's in the, I can remember where it is. Maybe it's in participants. No.
Down in reactions.
Reactions now? Is that where they got it? There we go. Yeah, reactions. So if you just want to use the hand raising mechanism in reactions, I'll try to get to you, and because I think that kind of sorts out the first come, first serve, if I remember right. And I'm just going to keep letting people in. Anybody from down south, southeast? Are you guys surviving hurricanes? Anybody from that part of the world?
Just down in Southwest Florida. It was just like a bad storm.
Yeah. Did you get out of there okay? I mean, I don't think Southwest Florida was definitely getting it, right? The upper part of the panhandle there, yeah?
Yeah, up there you did, but down where I was far away. You could see it. Oh, it messed everything up, though.
Yeah, yeah. All right. Well, I'll just hang out here and make idle conversation until I see a hand go up, and then we'll take it from there. I don't know how this is going to go. I'm sure we're going to adjust this over time. I just wanted to always kind of make this an option and really was never in a position to do this until we got the lab rebuilt here. So, all right, Christopher Dean, you are the man. You're the inaugural question asker in the inaugural open forum of the lab. Go.
This is just a general question from the 7 update. With heat on every input channel, are you going back and not using some of the plugins you've used in the past?
I've repositioned some of them, is the answer. Now that I've got heat on inputs, I actually go back to what I do much more often in Pro Tools, which is use heat and decide whether I want it to be tube mic emulation, tube saturation emulation, or tape saturation. I'll make a decision of that on input now. And in terms of other types of processing like that, I go back and put Phoenix on my groups now. So I'll have a Phoenix on drums, a Phoenix on bass, a Phoenix on the guitar group, all of the rest of them, and can obviously just add as much of that as I want. And that's my tape saturation path, for sure. Might even add one, well, I definitely would add one probably to the left-right bus as well. I almost always have a tape saturation plug-in on my left-right bus anymore. So does that answer your question there?
It does. You got something you can show us real quick, or
in terms of just
how you've changed the channel?
Well, again, I mean, there's no real change to the approach. It's just the mechanism I'm using. For you guys that aren't familiar with it, hang on, let me get an input strip up here and I'll try to show it. Stand by for me. Let's see, I think I want to do this.
I forget, there's heat on groups available too, yeah? Or
no? At this point,
channels.
only on inputs right now.
It's funny. The last couple of shows I've done was the first time on version 7 after not being on the desk for a while. And each time I keep sort of reminding myself, I'm like, oh yeah, I've got to check out the heat. And then I get through sound check, I get through the show, and then I'm like, I never checked out the heat.
I
And
never checked out the heat.
I've done it twice now.
Yeah, and I would caution you with it slightly. I think it's probably good to do this, is that, a little goes a long way. All of these saturation plugins like this, especially for tape saturation, even for tube mic saturation, etc., are relatively subtle. So the mistake that I see almost everybody make when they first start using these is they want to keep turning the knob until it's like glaringly obvious that they hear it. Then they move on to the next channel and do the same thing. And the additive effect of that over, 32, 48, 64 channels, all of a sudden you'll start to realize it's like, wow, man, what's that thing that's going on in my mix right now? And it's the additive effect of all of that. Honestly, to some degree, it's really no different than oversaturating a mic pre too many times on the way to tape, or oversaturating and over compressing in tape, where all of a sudden you get it played back and it's like, wait a minute, what's going on here? I'll fully admit I had this happen on a session, one of the early sessions in my life that I produced. I was full blown producer on the thing and wanted to record the analog tape and then print it off to Pro Tools and mix, kind of mix in the box, kind of a hybrid of mixing in the box and on the console. And I printed it too hot. We were definitely printing too hot to the analog. And by the time we got it back, it was just like, wow, how come I can't get some of this brightness off my overheads and my hi-hats and stuff, and they were just printed too hot. At the time it was going on, it sounded fine. I was just like, oh, this is going to be so good. But it was one of those things where I couldn't back out of it once I got it done. So it kind of dealt us fits all the way through mix. We finally got it, but it was, it was a really good lesson learned, even though we were using, it was a Studer A800, good high quality tape, but we just went too far with it. Just got too greedy with it. All right, let me get over to something where I can show you this. Let's see, maybe I'll do this. Let's do this and this. All right, let me share up this screen here. Okay, you guys should be able to see a venue screen there, like a CTM, a channel touch module there, right?
Yes.
Okay. So as you can kind of see here on these two inputs, I've got heat on both of these. This is a kick inside mic and a snare top mic. And let me see if I can blow this out where we can see it here. This will be better to do it this way. Move this over a little bit. So for the kick there, you can see on can you guys see my cursor there? Yeah, there we go. You can see my cursor. These are the settings for the heat here, right? So if I go left, that is going to be tape saturation. If I go right, you'll see it changes color, and that is tube mic saturation, I believe. All right, have I got it backwards? No, I'm sorry, I think I have it backwards. It's tube mic going left with the red. No, it's color on the screen, sorry. Right is red, and that indicates tube saturation. Left is purple, which indicates tape saturation, right? And then on top of it, you have a color choice or a tone, and that is the control that's right next to it. Generally speaking, bigger number is brighter, lower number is not as bright, okay? Hang on, I gotta let some more people in here. Now, like the show file I have up is honestly not as I described it. This is something I've been working on. This actually has tape saturation on that kick and snare. Normally I would reverse that and do tube saturation there and then do the tape compression at the group level, maybe even at the parallel compressed level. I might do it there. So, okay. So, but I would caution you to just be judicious with it, and add it in bits and pieces as you go along, and you'll all of a sudden you'll be able to hear it. And I would suggest to you, if you're doing it on Venue, which obviously you are if you're using Heat, you can actually set up a function key. And I do this all the time with this kind of processing, where I set up a bypass for all of it at one time, and where I can just kind of take it in and out and see what it's doing on my mix. So you can do that in the events list, right? So let me see if I can pull that up where you can see it. Now, it takes a lot to build it. I'm not going to lie to you. So you would have to build an event basically for every channel that you want to instantaneously bypass, right? So you'd have to go to channel 1, that that function, or pick what switch you want to use as the function. And I would just pick a function switch, a normal function switch, so you can have it away from you where you don't accidentally hit it during the show. And then have the action be to bypass the heat on a given channel. Now the way you would set it up here, I don't know if I got a good example of it here, but let's say this is the switch that we're going to be pressing. In this case, it was a color switch, one of the color switches down at the bottom of the channel. And then the action was going to be to bypass a plug-in here. But it would, in your situation, it would just be bypass heat, and you would pick the channel that's going to happen. And then you could add 7 more channels of that to that function. Okay? So it would be, I'm going to press the color switch, and it's going to bypass heat on these 8 channels. And you can set it up where it toggles, right? If I press the function switch again, it'll all come back in. And if you want more than 8 channels, the kind of the power user way to do this is to take this event and duplicate it, right? Then the trigger is already set, and then you just add 8 more channels in the second control. So, if you had 96 channels, obviously it's going to take 16, is that right? Don't ask me to do math. 12 versions of that event to do it, but it's all going to work on one button, right? So what I do with this is I have some show files that I've built that only have these control builds in them. Like I have one control build that is every channel at the push of a button, I can bypass their EQ. Every channel at the push of a button, I can bypass their dynamics. Every channel at the push of a button, I can bypass all the high pass filter and low pass filter. Same thing for heat. And then once I'm done with that, I just carry it on my USB key. And if I walk into a show file, doesn't matter, if I walk into a show file that I'm just guesting on or whatever, I can import all that stuff, import all those events easily to the list. And then I have them right there. I don't have to rebuild them. Like once I have it done, I never have to rebuild them. Matter of fact, I might be able to give you an example of that here. So let's go to filing, import. I think I've got it here. Because no, demo template shows. Function, yeah, this is a good example. So function key placeholders. So let's see here. So I would import events here, right? So that is going to import, let's see here, let's see if I can just do this. Yeah, so this is the wrong set. I don't have it on this show file. Or do I have it here? Maybe it's here. Yeah, there we go. So I'm importing these events into the show file that is currently loaded, right? Which was bypass channel processing on channel 1, channel 2, channel 3, channel 4. Now, the way I've done it in this particular set is bypass channel processing means all channel processing. Means heat, high pass, low pass, EQ, dynamics, everything that's in that chain, short of channel delay. Actually, channel delay might even be in that. But that eats up all 8 of those slots, so you have to do one for every channel then. Okay, so, but you can obviously go in, once you've imported this, pick which ones you want to turn on and off and make them available to that function key. I mean, it's really, once you get some of this stuff built, man, you can do some really, really cool stuff on your console and really be able to navigate really quickly and do some changes. So back to the original context, if I've got heat on a whole bunch of channels, I would strongly encourage you, and especially if you've got heat and tape saturation, then build 2 events for that and say, okay, what does my mix sound like without all the heat on it? Or what does my mix sound like without all the tape saturation on it? And then, kind of go back and forth and listen to them both again, add them both, whatever you need to do. But, if you're going to work with these kind of saturation qualities in your mix, like I said, they're so subtle and kind of build. The more channels you add to them, I would really encourage you to do that. Take the time to do that. Matter of fact, what I might do, I'll make the commitment to do this, but I don't know when I'm going to get it up. In the folder that is for the lab, I'll put the show files that have got my pre-built bypasses in it, because they'll work on any console. So, because it's built all the way out. I think I built them all the way out to 192 channels. So, I'll share those with you guys if you want them. How's that for a deal? How is that? That was probably worth the price of admission right there.
Thank you.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, I'll do that. As long as you promise that you'll go into the events list and learn how to use and build those things, man. They are just such money to be able to do those kind of moves. It's so money. As it was said famously in a movie, babe, you're so money and you don't even know it. So there we go. All right, let's see. Who had their hand up next? I did see another hand up. Who had it? Was it Denis that had it up? Yeah, go, man.
I'm really new to the SXL, Robert, and I had a very lame question.
There are no such things as lame questions.
Well,
especially
yeah,
from
I
you,
get
sir.
that.
Not a problem at all.
Yeah.
Come
on. I was looking for a ducker, and on my previous consoles, I had the option of gate or ducker, and I understand that now I have the option of gate or expander. So is that something that's coming? Is it going to have to come up with another plugin somewhere, or I just couldn't find it?
Yeah, it's okay. Currently, there is not a ducker option on the gate that is on board of the console, meaning the in-strip processing. But you can go use a plugin to do it, and Avid makes an exceptional plugin to do this. It is absolutely my go-to for it. So stand by and I'll kind of show it to you here. Just do a mono version. So the cool thing with their ducker is you can use it either with the expander or the compressor. So if I remember right, let's see here. I'll just put this on something just so I can. All right, so if you notice right up here, you have the word duck. So once I go to that, then I can choose how deep I want that duck to be, where I want the threshold to be. You'll be able to, obviously, let's see if I can get some signal in that so we can do it here. Let's turn this off. Yeah, so you can see the signal there, and I can set the threshold for it, right? So as soon as that signal approaches that threshold, it's going to duck by this depth. Where is that? Oh, yeah, there we go. Right. You following me there? Are you with me? And you obviously got all kinds of sources for the side chain of that. You can EQ it, peak filter it, whatever you want to do there. But I love that one because it's just so easy to set up, just nothing.
Well, okay, then this brings me to my next question. When I was looking I actually found this plugin, by the way. So it was available, and then I was trying to find my key, and I couldn't find a key going from a group. Is it because I hadn't created a group yet?
I don't think you can do that, actually. I don't think you can create a source from a group. Yeah, it's only channels.
Okay, so okay, so here's the situation. So I have 4 singers, and I'm trying to duck the guitars or whatever, right? I'm trying to duck something based on when all 4 singers are going. So as the 4 singers are not there at the same time, most of the time, what would be a solution?
Yeah. Okay. So here's what I would do. You're gonna create a bridge there. So you're gonna take an aux out or a group out. It doesn't matter, into a plugin. Matter of fact, I'll do it for you here just so we can,
Okay.
because we can. You know, right? I mean, that's what we're doing here. All right. So we're gonna say, let me pull in a plugin here. So we're gonna use the time adjuster plugin as a bridge here. That's my kind of my go-to to do it. And you wouldn't necessarily have to do this. You can use the actual Pro Expander as the plugin if you want to do it. Well, actually not in this case because we're going to build the sidechain bridge. So forget what I just said there. And then we're going to take an aux out or a group out. It could be either one, Denny, either one.
Okay.
So I'll just take 62 out. And then I'm going to return this to a channel. So I'll just go way down here. Let's go into one. Do something obvious here. 144. Okay. So now what's going to happen is, let me mark it so we can all be talking the same language. 144, where are you? All right, so I'm going to create a channel that's called Sidechain Drive now. And I'm going to take this aux. What was it? What did I say? Aux 62, right? So we're going to call this Sidechain Drive. All right, and then when we get to this this ducker, we're going to choose the key source as sidechain drive channel, not the aux here, the channel, right? Okay, so now you have a channel, an input channel on your console that is going into the drive, the sidechain of this ducker, okay? And that channel carries anything you want to put in it via that aux. So I was using aux 62. Now anything I turn into aux 62 and have that channel up is going to go to the side chain of that ducker. You follow me there? Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I've had
Thank
very,
you very
very
much.
Yeah, the one I've used this for a lot is communications, right? Like if I've got a lot of comm mics on stage and somebody wants to talk to them and, you know, I want it to, you know, turn down my near fields or whatever, you know, turn down my mix into my near field, then I'll put that ducker across the mix bus that is going, you know, to my near fields, have people talk. As soon as they get on mic and talk, it turns down that mix so I can hear them. Things like that, you know, I mean, it's really, really handy for those kind of things. I tried really hard to get us, you know, and I don't want to sound like I'm talking negatively here about the process, but it's just kind of what goes on in console design. Very early on in the design process of S6L, I asked for them to have inserts on the monitor buses, meaning the A and B monitor bus on the console. And it didn't make it in. And I tried to get them to do it later after the console, the protos were released and everything. And they said, no, we can't do it because it means we need to completely re-architect what kind of processing channel that is now. And, you know, the monitor bus typically doesn't have inserts on it. But if you could do that there, that would be so simple if we could do it. So it's kind of a miss on our part, but there are ways around it, especially if you're going to use a matrix to do your local listens and even out to a headphone amp or whatever you want to do it to. If you're going to do that, then you can break down this same sort of process and have external sources like comm mics duck the mix that you're listening to at any given time. You can get really fancy with it on a monitor console where you can choose the mix that is being ducked to follow solo, to do all kinds of stuff through the events list, right? So I'm actually, you know, I think we're probably going to have some questions on this today, but I'm going to probably try to defer them a little bit until the next actual formal lab, which is going to be on doing front of house and monitors and front of house plus monitors using bus to bus workflows. Like how do I do groups up to auxes and all kinds of things like that? Where are my pickoff points? All those kind of things. We might be able to get into it a little bit today. I just don't want to get really down the rabbit hole too far here today of something that I'm going to cover probably in a few weeks. So Did that answer your question though, Denny? Did that give you a way to do that? Okay, awesome. All right. I only see you listed as iPad guest, so I can only call you iPad guest. iPad guest, you're on the air.
Yeah, this is Alex from Switzerland. Hi, Robert.
Hi,
everybody.
Alex. How are you, man?
Sorry, I was very quickly came in and didn't. I just missed to enter my name somewhere. I don't know.
That's all right. No problem. Anonymity is an asset in the lab. That's all right. No problem.
True, but I didn't do it. That wasn't the reason. Okay. I got a question about the Dante card, which I'm using on stage for getting 16 inputs from Ableton. And I'm not quite sure what the SRC does and how could it help me? When do I need it, and why is it on every channel?
I believe, boy, don't quote me on this, but I'm 99% sure that you can do SRC in the device setup in Dante, right? So is your Ableton working at a different sample rate than S6L?
Yes, it is.
Is it at 48K?
It's on 48, correct? And I did that change in the Dante setup.
Yeah.
And so so is it kind of unnecessary to do anything on the console, I guess, but I'm not quite sure.
No, I don't think so, because the Dante card follows Dante controller there. So anything you do in Dante controller will immediately be applied to that card on the device, right? So, boy, I'm just sitting here thinking. And if anybody's got an answer, man, please raise your hand and shout it out. I'll use this opportunity to say, I don't have all the answers. I probably have a good way of finding out answers, but if I don't have the answer, I'll tell you I don't know, and we'll move on from there. Okay, so, but what I was going to say is I think I know it now. I was going to say if you go to the Dante card and adjust it on the Dante controller to 48K, but I don't think you're going to be allowed to do that. I think it's got to stay at 96. And then the external devices need to SRC up to it, right? In your Dante devices, is the Dante card your clock leader?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I would do as well. Have you had success with it, or is it not working, or is it working?
I'm using it since months, every weekend. Everything's
Beautiful.
working.
Love it.
But I just never thought about why this SRC button is on my input on the channels, and I never touched it. I was too scared. Never touch a running system.
You're right. Don't fix it until it's broke, right? Okay, great. Well, I'm glad to hear it's working great. Yeah, I mean, I'll be totally honest with you. I've just kind of delved into the Dante world in S6L with any kind of depth here over the last 6 months. I finally got my Dante certificates and, in level 1, 2, and 3, et cetera. So, I feel a lot better about it than I have previously. So, all right. Is that Fred that's got his hand up? Fred, do you have a question, or do you just want to catch up, man? You just want to talk. You just want to.
No, I actually had a couple questions. What is that? Does SRC mean source?
No, sample rate conversion.
Sample rate conversion. Okay. I had two questions. On this plugin you currently have up there, I see there is a look ahead. Yeah. Does that change? We've been talking about time in a lot of your labs. Does that change how much that plugin takes up in time when you change that control? It will.
That's actually a fantastic question. And I'm going to say it might. I almost don't see how it couldn't, because, well, let's see here. If you're doing look ahead with external sidechain.
Well, no, I'm just talking about the plugin itself. Not. I don't even know how sidechains work. I've never used it. I don't know anything about it. That's
dude, you
guys
need to come to Nirvana. I mean,
I don't use this in broadcast. And then my other question was, do you have a knee control on your console?
I do, yes.
Okay,
very hard all the way out to very soft on the console, yeah.
Every time I've ever seen it, it's always really hard. And I'm like, I don't like hard knees.
Yeah, no, you can go, a really wide range. And the cool thing on the Dynamics processor that is on the console, you can get all the way out to 100-to-1 ratio on the compressor limiter, So, you can build in an absolute brick wall on it. And but all the way down to less than 2-to-1 soft knee. You can go all the way that entire range on that one processor. So
These days, I'm gonna get over and play with that desk.
I know, man. I know. Yeah. I mean, yeah. Come on. Let's make it happen. Let's eat something first. We might drink something first, and then let's come over and play. It's always a lot more fun.
Well, I made 47 jars of prickly pear jalapeno cactus jelly yesterday with my neighbors down the street. And then we made prickly pear margaritas, and just, I haven't drank tequila in a long time, so this morning was a little rough.
Clearly you need a friend. Come on. All right. So I will find out the information on the sidechain. I got to believe if you engage look ahead, it's going to delay that path. I have to believe that. That just seems logical to me. I feel very confident in saying, although this could be wrong, I'm going to set up an experiment to check this. Because if it's in the input path, if that plugin is in an input path and ADC is turned on, then what I want to believe is that as delay gets added to that path, ADC recognizes it and adjusts accordingly. Okay? I know this was a big deal in Pro Tools for a long time, where the ADC in Pro Tools was not addressing sidechains, and they were having problems with this very issue. So I'm definitely going to check it here. I haven't checked it yet, but I'll put it on the list of things to check. So stand by on that. I'll get you an answer. Good question, though. Very good question. All right. How are we doing so far? Is everybody okay with this format? Obviously, we're not going to do this every week. I'm going to do this, one every 3-4 labs, whatever. It just gives me a little bit of break in terms of prep, especially coming up, man. I got a lot of work coming up the next month. It's going to be hard to get a couple more labs done. I got a lot of shows coming up. So, who else we got? We got a lot of thumbs up. Anybody else got anything they want to contribute? Questions they want to ask? And just for the record too, it doesn't necessarily have to be about S6L. If you got live sound questions, you got, approach to speaker tuning questions, things like that, I'm happy to address those as well. Like I said, just remember it's free advice and worth every penny. So
I was hoping Andrea was going to be here today. She had some questions for you on the old venue consoles, but she's not here today.
Who was going to be here?
I was hoping Andrea, the girl from the church that we had,
yeah.
Hanoi weirdness speakers system that. Anyway.
All right. Let's see here. How come I don't see everybody's name here now? What's going on? I see a person's hand up. Looks like you have a screen on the background.
We had James and Greg.
Oh, and you got another one here too. How come I don't see everybody's name here now? What the heck is going on? Okay. This is embarrassing, but I'm just going to try to describe you. Okay, you're wearing black. You have a beard. You have a black hat. Please come in with your question.
This is James.
James. Oh, there it is. Now it shows up. James Shaw. Okay, James. Bring it on, man. Sorry.
First of all, I find it funny to see your battery warning there. Has just a couple of weeks ago, I helped out a monitor engineer on a profile. And the solution was, yes, the date is wrong on the console. Yep. We need to change it. Of course, profile wouldn't tell you the battery was going, but replace your battery, Robert.
Yes, I know. It actually came on this morning. So, that'll be the afternoon job after I log out here. Yeah, at least we got the alert for it now. They didn't have it on the old profile systems. So you just
but my question was, with Waves plugins and on the surface of the console, when you've called up a channels insert and you're looking at plugins and you've got the parameters up, I saw there was also a knob that suggested to me that it would rotate through the slots in the Waves plugins by rotating it. And there was a button that I dug in the manual to find out what it meant, but I'm guessing it's a way to assign controls and waves to knobs on the surface. It's like all abbreviated, and it seems to suggest it's saying virtual parameter select or something, but it's like VR.
And that is and forgive me because I don't have my wave system installed here, so I apologize. I want to get it done. I'm waiting on some stuff from Waves is the honest answer. So
Yeah,
So
it's
the knob
on
that
the
you're
surface.
describing, is it actually on the surface?
Yes. Yeah, it's
Okay.
on the what do we call the surface again? The CM. You've got a fancy name for it.
CKM, channel
Oh, the
knob
CKM.
module. Yeah,
Yes,
CKM.
on the CKM.
Thank you.
There's a knob that suggests because it rotates through 0 to 5, and I'm like, I think that wants to rotate through the slots in waves, but I can't. It doesn't seem to do that, so I'm not sure what it does. And
If it
and
was
there's-
only 0 to 5, that leads me to believe it's probably not the slots, because I think there's 8 slots in a waves channel. Is there not?
I could be wrong in the numbers, but either way, I was curious what that knob was actually changing. And then the button, I went digging in manuals and I wasn't finding anything to help me out there.
Let me see something.
But
here.
if you've, it's kind of hard to describe if you've not got the waves up.
Yeah, stand by for a second here. Let me just see what I can find out on this. I'm going to stop the share for a sec. Talk amongst yourselves.
Hey, Michael, are you in Texas today?
Yes, sir.
Are you going to be there Wednesday? I'm coming to work AT&T Stadium. You want to go have dinner someplace?
Crap, you're gonna be let me give you a temporary yes. I don't know. I'm technically supposed to head back down to Houston tomorrow, but there are some things happening that may change. So let me say temporarily yes. I would love to.
Drop me your email address or a phone number in the chat.
Yep. Well, I don't want to do that while I'm driving though.
Yes, please don't.
Yeah. Robert's got it. Robert can send it to you.
Michael, you're
I'm sorry, what did you ask
driving.
for?
You like how I just used you on that, Robert?
Yeah, thank you.
Could you send Fred my information while I'm driving, please?
Your like email information?
Contact info. Yep. Email.
I'll do
phone.
it. Fred, if you could just drop me a quick
Yeah.
text and remind me, and I'll get it to you.
You're always driving, Michael.
I know, he's always going somewhere, isn't he?
Yes, and then it looks dangerous sometimes.
No.
Is there
See, that's the
somebody?
thing, though. I don't sit here and look at the phone. I look at the road. I listen.
Well, you must be a busy
Matter of fact,
man
I can't
going-
even see you guys right now. I've got the map up.
Now, seeing us is overrated, bro. I mean, you're not missing
Yeah.
anything there.
Here we go.
All right. I hate to say it, but I'm not seeing what I want to see on this, James. Hey, James. Okay, so do me a favor, please. Will you drop me an email at the Squawk Box address?
Sure.
And just say, just 10 words telling us what we talked about, and I'll get an answer for you and respond to it.
Right on. Thanks.
Sound all right? Sound like
Yeah.
a deal? Okay, man. And hopefully by the next time I do one of these, I'll have my waves rig back up here. I just got to get my authorizations redone and get a reinstall. So, all right. Next person. I don't see your name. Oh, there we go. It's my friend Greg Baker. Greg Baker, what's happening, brother?
Hey, two questions. One related to the lab, and one is basically an opinion poll that kind of came up in the back lounge. So the first question is, I'm a console hopper, and I have a buddy who has a 6L. So I went ahead and put together a time-aligned template to match my show file, and it worked going to an SD7 and then going to a CL, a little bit with the CL, but then third gig was an M3 in a club.
So,
And-
a Yamaha?
No, Midas. M3.
Oh, a Midas M3. I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm thinking of.
Yeah. You're thinking way back.
Yeah, sorry. I was showing my age there.
Yeah.
So let me stop you
but
there for a
yeah.
second because I want to clarify one thing. So you did a manually delay compensated file.
Yeah, yeah,
So you
yeah.
have
But
delay
following
inserts.
the
Or,
principles, yeah, and yeah, I loaded it as a template, and the show file loaded great, but the template, might have said, "What the hell is this?"
oh yeah, well, yeah. I mean, you're not going to be able to load an S6L template on any other console, for sure.
Yeah, but but
You can take the same
you get into
approaches.
bands who do clubs, and so how do you time align, especially on a Midas who doesn't do samples, it does milliseconds.
Yeah, I feel your pain there, brother. I feel your pain. I honestly, in those situations, but keep this in mind, Greg, because this is the thing that gets lost with a lot of people with these, this, even the concept of plugins. We use that term so loosely now, is that, in the Midas, that is, with the exception of using Waves or some other server out through AES 50 or whatever, that is a closed architecture.
Right.
Meaning you can use their plugins, which are already on their DSP.
Right.
So you don't need to time align there. That is already accounted for in their system. And if I remember right, I know they do this on Heritage. I just can't remember on the others, but they have some delay compensation, automatic delay compensation choices built in. But those only apply to the onboard processing, the stuff that is on that local DSP. Right.
Right.
Same thing applies.
Absolutely correct.
Same thing applies for Digico. Same thing applies for Yamaha, etc. The only time those fall down is when you go outside of the console and back in, either through AES for a standard insert, or through AES 50 or through MADI. Any of those where you got to go out and back as an insert, their automatic delay compensation is not going to account for that.
Yeah, and you can't do that live anyways, jumping into a console. You just can't.
Yeah, it's tough. I will just give you my piece of advice. If I was console hopping every day, I would have all of my show files would probably be built right to the left, right bus, minimal to no external insert processing. I'm going to keep it hopefully simple but effective there.
No aux bus to the subs?
No, I could still do that. Sure.
Yeah.
Still do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I would probably build the same template mindset, the same concept, just build it in 3, 4, 5 different consoles and carry it with me,
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, one template across all is not going to work, but you could definitely build templates of all the consoles. Now, it gets a little tougher outside of Avid land because of compatibility, right? I mean, I think even in Digico land now, they still struggle a little bit going console to console within their own line with the same show file.
Right.
I think Yamaha's way better than they used to be about it.
To a 7, yeah.
Yeah. So, we just out of survival had to make it that way. I mean, we just had to, especially working off of platform where everything is interchangeable. It's like, hey, the show files have to be unified there. You got to be able to use one show file on any console. It doesn't matter which one you use it on.
And show file architecture, quote architecture, is pretty much an open standard that, for all the manufacturers. What I'm seeing, I haven't run across a console that I haven't been able to load a show file.
Yeah, the biggest challenge you'll have loading show files as a touring guy who's going out and console hopping, as you put it, which is a great term. I love that. Is like if I've got my show file, my template set up where I'm doing 16 subgroups and 32 auxes, or if I've got my show file set up to go, all my inputs go directly to the left, right bus. Plus this number of auxes. If that doesn't match their architecture, that their hard architecture, meaning what they've got patched into the console and patched in stage tracks, you're going to have to adjust that there.
Right.
You're going to have to repatch to match their system. Right. And that gets doubly hard on a festival, right? If you're in a walk up on a festival, that's why it almost demands. If you're going to, sound companies are privy enough to it now, or used to it enough now, where they usually will say to you, you're not just going to walk up and load your show file. That's just not going to happen at the front of house riser. If you want to load your show file, send it to us. We'll prep it for the day. When you get there, that show file will be loaded and patched correctly, right?
that's even happening. You show up early, on a walk-in outdoor, anyways.
Yeah.
And you hand it to the system guy, and then they look at it, and it's different, but the basics are there, and that's all you need.
Well, and again, everybody's kind of learned it, and they've learned it the hard way. And I'll be the first to admit to you, this whole concept of, oh yeah, we're only going to have one console in the festival, and everybody's going to use it. That was a pipe dream. Okay, that was a pipe dream. It was never going to happen.
I was at Donington.
It's one of those things where it's like, yeah, it's possible to do that. Why would you ever do that? That's not gonna happen. That's no reality in that. But what sound companies learned over time doing that is they kind of went back, honestly, to a little bit more of an analog mindset, where all of the system drive, including equalization and distribution, is done outside of the console.
Right.
So you don't have to rely on a console to do that. And that, because every console that mixes, let's leave immersive out of the conversation for a second. Every console that mixes at some point in the path gets down to the left-right bus.
Right.
So as long as you can get to a left-right plus a sub out of any console that shows up, I can take that and deliver it to the PA system, and off we go.
Right.
But if I've got all of that built into the output section of the console and then reload a show file on top of it, I'm dead. I'm done.
Totally agree. The second question was, Bob and I are still going back and forth, and I think he's going back and forth with you. And it's an opinion question only, not related to the lab, but it's talking about, mixing backstage right now in the days of COVID. And I would, we're soliciting more input. So, because he's going out on a major one, and the question's in the air.
Yeah. Well, let's chew on that for a little bit. This is a great place to chew on that a little bit. And for you guys that aren't familiar with what Greg is talking about there, I run a kind of a social online program on Fridays at 4:20 Pacific time. And it's open topic. It's called the Back Lounge, right? So we can talk about anything there. And one of the topics that has come up in the last couple of weeks is with how bad COVID is right now. And you have a number of people that are sitting in the middle of the audience, extremely exposed. And the tour is literally at risk depending on if these people get sick, right? These front of house engineers, lighting guys, et cetera, that are out in the front of house are actually suffering a little bit because they kind of have to live in the bubble to help ensure that the tour doesn't go down. Not allowed to do as much on show days, et cetera. As a matter of fact, Sam Burkow even brought up the idea of they put up the weather tent at front of house now, and the drapes are down for the entire thing, trying to keep those guys safe in there. So it all drove the idea of, I was talking to Night Bob online here not long ago, and he mentioned, there have been tours in the past, there's precedent for it from people mixing backstage. Are we going to set up front of house positions backstage as a result of the virus to end up keeping not only just the people safe, but the tours going? I mean, look, you want the textbook example. We just had widespread panic cancel 3 huge shows because everybody in the band and the crew got COVID. 90,000 tickets on hold, So, that's what's at stake here. So the question from our end of it then is, okay, well, how do you go about doing that? How do you make that real? How do you make it work?
Do you put a reference mic up there? What I was thinking, you put a reference mic to Smart, up there, and then I'm thinking old school. Put up a set of Bonaro microphones on a mannequin at the front of house position, and then bring those back and throw it in, like you used to do 2 S4s,
I mean, I think we could run into all kinds of things there. Denny, if you got a comment, I'll give it to you 1 second. Pull it right to you.
Yeah.
I personally, I've felt this way for a long time, honestly, a long, long time, that I could mix a show on a pair of control room monitors distantly located and send it to the PA system and be able to do a show like that. I fully believe I could absolutely do that. And, I've talked to Buford Jones about this in the past because he did some Faith Hill stuff like that in the past where he was actually out in a truck on the dock mixing on near fields and mixing the show. And we both almost said it at exactly the same time. It was like, I know if I'm doing that, I'll bet you I could pull together a mix faster than I can do it in the hall, because then it's just a matter of getting the frequency response and the delivery of it sorted out in the room, right? So the morbid question becomes at that point, if you're setting up backstage to keep everybody safe, who's the poor guy you're going to send out front to have a listen and see how it sounds, right? Who we sacrificing today? But that said, I do believe you could put up analysis mics. I could certainly use Smart to get some sense of the transfer that's happening. How close is the PA to what I'm doing coming off the console? That would be totally valid. Would it be a huge adjustment for us to do it? It absolutely would be a huge adjustment for us to do it. Could it not be done? It absolutely could be done. You could absolutely do it, but it would take a pretty big adjustment for people. You talk about being out of your comfort zone. Put me back in a locker room, sending money, sending signal out to, 200 speakers. That'll get your attention really, really quickly. Denis, you had a comment there?
Yeah. The Neumann head, which I looked into for this particular reason, once I looked at the frequency response of it, I had to rule it out because in the top end, it was just so unruly that it didn't make sense. So I wouldn't know what we would use to get a good ambisonic pickup in the hall. I'll just leave it
honestly,
at that.
I don't know either at this point. I mean, like I say, I don't know that I would throw up the binaural in my monitors and mix right on that by any stretch of the imagination. But, I would just worry about the mix, listening to it in real time coming off the monitors and make that good, and then have some way of validating that out in the room, right? To me, that's the best way to go. I mean, if I'm listening to the Sting CD, I'm pretty sure it's going to sound good by the time it gets to the PA, if the room has been quote unquote tuned properly and the PA has been put out properly. So as long as I can get a good solid mix coming off the console, I feel pretty good about my chances there. So let's see. I got a couple of the guys. James, have you got a question or comment on this, or you want to move on to another topic?
I could briefly comment on this. I have done that.
I'll ask
before.
you to comment on this, and then I'll come back to you for the topic switch. Okay.
Great. So I have done that before, mix from backstage, but there was a number of factors. One, we'd already been touring with me out at front.
Yeah.
So it was established. The mix was established. The PA was known and established. And it worked out great. It was the reason we did it was because of weather and horrible protection provided by the promoter for front of house. So I said, well, then set me up in a dressing room, and it worked out fantastic. But another factor was there basically was no stage volume besides drums. So there was no monitors, there were no guitar amps, etc. And that made it work.
Your chances are certainly a lot better there.
Yes,
sure.
I did have to send out my tech, who was outside with the tablet, to radio in if anything's weird, and feel for you to adjust the PA to the room to compensate for. So we have to sacrifice somebody for that. But
I mean, I think if I was doing it, and we were going to do that, who's the guy walking around in the audience with the hazmat suit on? That's my systems guy, right? So. But at that point, I would just turn the PA over to him and say, hey, make it sound right. Obviously within some sort of limit, because, if he goes out there and just cranks all the brightness on the PA, my gain before feedback is going to go crazy. But, so you got to have somebody, you got to have an adult doing that, honestly, for sure.
Hey, Robert, what was that mic? What was that mic setup that was actually, it was like a crash test dummy, only it had the mic set up, where the ears would be on either side.
Yeah. That's what Greg was talking about. He was talking about the Neumann binaural, which is just like that. Yeah, it looks like a crash test dummy. And again, I think I could use that as a reference. I might want to just pull it up and go, okay, what's that sound like? Okay, and over time, you would develop the ears for that and go, okay, I know what's happening there. Over time, where you're listening to something in acoustic space versus just coming off the console.
Yeah, I mean. Way back in the analog days, I did Todd Rundgren at the Ohio State Fair with that, back in the trailer, 100 yards back, because we were broadcasting to Warner Cube cable. So I said, screw it. We'll do it both at the same time. And it worked, I think. Everybody loved it.
Well, like I said, I've done it before, and I actually prefer the perspective in the near fields. It's like I can hear, very clearly what I'm doing right there, in terms of what's going out. Then it's just down to getting the PA to deliver it properly. I mean, the times I've done it, really most of them, actually almost all of them were in the 80s, the early 80s. I did it a couple times in the early 90s, but it was almost always in Latin America. It was down where it was just like, okay, it's sound quality, COVID, that's not in play, whatever. My life is in danger if I'm out there. Okay, so I'm not going to go out there. Let's just set me up over here and I'll mix,
Yeah, rock pop.
Yeah. So, I would just set up a little mini PA, kind of backstage, especially if we were in stadiums. I would set it up at the other end of the stadium and just go back there and try to create my own little world. It wasn't, don't get me wrong, it wasn't Nirvana by any stretch of the imagination, but it was, safer than getting pelted to death. So, Gear, you got a comment on this topic, or you have something else coming?
Both, so I'll do the comment.
Yeah.
I just put a link in the chat to B&K, Brüel & Kjær. They have a torso with proper ears and microphones inside the ears. So if you had the money, you could ask to borrow it and test, because I think B&K has some rental system, so you could actually rent it and test it and see if it's a viable solution, and then that is much cheaper than to die from COVID.
Sure. Samantha, if you're still in, thanks for coming. I appreciate you showing up here. Thanks.
I am, yeah. Thanks. Have a good one.
Yeah, thank you. What was I going to say? Oh, somebody had posted it in the chat here, how many tours already have a roamer? I would say every tour has a roamer. If they're a tour out of any size, everybody's got a roamer to go kind of roam the room and even make some adjustments if they need to do it right. So that's not uncommon. The tough part obviously would be like just keeping them safe, right? I mean, now you're not sitting in the middle of 18,000 people. You're out roaming around in the middle of 18,000 people. So, you're actually exposing that person pretty dramatically. So, it might require, I can think of things where it's like, okay, it might require that we put up multiple microphones to be able to look at multiple places in the room and just kind of make sure we're okay and see what's going on. But I got to be honest with you guys, I don't think this is out of the question by any stretch of the imagination. And I would tell you almost unequivocally, if a tour brought up this concept and said, okay, this is the way we can ensure that we stay on the road, they will demand it. They will do it. Absolutely. They will say, okay, from now on, we're working from backstage. Video guys, get yourself a big video monitor, put a camera out front so you can see your show, and call it. Here we go. The lighting guy becomes a video director for all intents and purposes at that point, right? All right. Well, this is going pretty good, man. I like how we're doing this here. Sorry, go ahead.
The only problem with that is if COVID ever gets under control and we all feel comfy and happy, those promoters aren't going to want to give up those front of house seats anymore.
That's a very salient point there. That's a point driven from years of experience right there, and you're probably right.
Yep. If we can make that successful, we will probably never be at front of house in amongst the crowd and get that nice shiver up our spine again.
Yeah, it might be right there. I think I honestly I think that would come down really for the most part to the artist. If you've got artists that are so money hungry, they'll just let it go that way. But, most artists would, if they have any kind of relationship with you as an engineer, and you could say to them, look, okay, I can assure you the show is going to be much better if I'm mixing it from out front than from backstage, So they would have the pull to say that. But that said, man, I've dealt with plenty of accountants where you just go, do you even care about what's going on out here? And they go, nope, I'm here to sell tickets, period, end of story.
Yep. We call them the grumpies.
Yeah, I won't use the word that we call them, but that's a whole nother story. It's a whole nother set of stories. All right, let's see, Nigel, if you're still there, looks like you got your camera turned off. Or who was it that had the question earlier? Nigel, you got a comment on the topic?
No, hello everyone.
Hi.
I had a situation that I emailed you on. reference using these consoles to do monitor mixes with groups.
Yeah.
And I realized that on the digital consoles, I can do that, but on the 6L consoles, I can't. And I was looking for a way around that.
If you're on venue consoles that have software version 7.0 and later, they have a full bus-to-bus workflow on them now. Right, so you can send auxes to groups, groups to auxes, any combination of the above to do that now. So if you can just get on the latest version of software, you can do it on S6L.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah. It just released I want to say around last October, 7.0 was there. And we're in the process of doing, or at least I'm in the process of doing labs that are focused exactly on that workflow. So I'm just going to, I don't want to dig into it today because we're so late here. But
all right.
Probably the next formalized lab will be on front of house and monitors or monitors using bus to bus. So just stay tuned to the lab, come to the next one, and I'll cover it in total.
Definitely.
Okay. Nice set of pictures you got back there. Where are you there?
I'm actually in a rehearsal room in Miami, in Florida.
Oh, great. That looks great, man. That looks like a fun place.
Yes, it is. It is.
Nice. Okay, so Nigel, thanks, and check back with us on. I'll get to that topic for sure.
Will do, definitely.
Thank you, man. Thanks for showing up today. Appreciate it. All right, James, you were going to change topics there and get us on one, and then I'll get to gear right after you. I think it was James. Yeah, there we go.
I was wondering if you had any tips or tricks with going from 24s to 32s and layouts.
Yes. I wish I had a really, really good answer here for you, but we've got one hiccup in that process. But still, it's better than the way it used to be. So I don't know if you know this, but all consoles now, all S6L consoles offer 48 channel layouts. So it's not like a situation where on this console you have a 24 channel layout, this console you have a 16 channel layout, this one you have 32. They all have access to 48. So if you build with that in mind, like when you're building your show file, build thinking S6L, 48D, and then as you go to the smaller consoles, then you can adjust your layout easier. Because the challenge we have with it right now, I'll see if I can show it here. Let me get to this. Stand by. Let me get a screen share up, and I'll show you the issue. And I'm actually begging the development guys to fix this. So just hang in there. Absolutely begging.
Uno. Bibi, Jepsingan.
Stop or mute your mics, fellas, please, if you can. Mute your mics.
Yeah.
Let's see who's open here.
I think it's Nigel.
Is it Nigel? Yeah, I think he got it. Or did he? Yeah, maybe not.
Fred, I sent that.
Let's see here.
Thank you, buddy.
Is this guy, I believe. There we go. Okay. All right, so what you're looking at here is a 48D, and this is a custom layout right now. Okay, so if I would have laid this out in 32D, it would come up exactly like this, right? Or if I would have laid it out in 24D, it would come up exactly like this. Meaning whatever I had selected or placed in channel position 1 on the 24D would show up in 1 here. Okay, right on down the line. And I have the ability to nudge this as a layout now. So if I go into 8 and I nudge, I'm moving in 8 channel segments here, right? And so if I was to move, let's see how I want to explain this here. If I was to go from a 48D to a 32D, the challenge becomes this. 8, 16, 24, 32. So if I move to a 32D, this is where my channels would stop, right? And the challenge for me, this is the part of it that I don't like right now, is that in 48D, this was under my center section, right? In 32D, once I go to 32D, this is under the center section now because of the smaller layout. Now you would think I want to go that way, right? I want to move this 8 back under the thing, but I can't move that direction. I can only go the other direction. I can't slide it over. I can only go in one direction with the layouts right now. So I'll call it a bug. It's just a miss in the development of it. So the only way you can do this is when you go from 48D to 32D or 24D, and you want to get the same 8 channels under your middle section, is you got to go and drag and drop it, right? So that's the bummer. Short of that, everything else is great with it. But if you're really concerned about keeping the same 8 channels under your center section, then that's the challenge that you have to deal with. It'll be able to be solved as soon as both of these lights go green, and you can manipulate it either way in the layout. But I got a feeling that it's one of those things that sounds simple in coding, but it's not, because I think you're essentially, well, I don't even know that. I shouldn't say that. It's speaking above my pay grade. But I think it's between the show files. It's just saying, okay, in that layout, what's channel 1? Okay, what's channel 1? It's channel 1 in all of the layouts, right? So it would have to be kind of smart enough to go, what is under the center section? Let me make that the same every time I load, regardless of what show file. Now, the trip up with that in SXL land is that for things like 16C, there is no center section, right? There is no MTM, right? So what do you put under there? Which 8 do you choose to put under there? So that becomes the challenge. It's not an easy solution, but there's a lot worse, a lot tougher corners to be backed into there. But does that answer your question in terms of the layouts? Because all of them have 48 available to you. You just got to pick where you put them.
Yeah. No. That all made sense and whatnot. It was going from I'd set up on a 32D and I'd done layouts on the console to fit, and that was great. And then I've got to show on a 24. Well, I went through it all and I was like, I can rearrange like such, and and trying to bring like the most important things to the top layer. And I'm using snapshots to do the first layer for all of the songs, and it worked out just fine on the 24. But then I was like, now if I go to a 32, I'm going to have just basically a blank section. Because
if you set them up on the 24,
but I
that's
can't
not true, because if you
sorry,
I was going to say, if you set up on the 24, right? Let's say this was your 24, right?
Yeah.
And you set up your layout there. When you go to the 32 now, this will be sitting in the first 24 channels, and 32 will be, 25 through 32 will be blank.
Yeah, that's what I was saying.
And the problem is you don't have the ability to move it this way. Yeah.
Which is no biggie. I'd be like, okay, I'll leave that section alone. I don't need it.
Well, that's the easier solution, because the granddaddy of the challenge there is, if you have a lot of snapshots built with different layouts in it, you can't propagate that shift into the layouts.
Yeah.
Now, here's what leads me to believe we're going to get to a cool solution with it, because you can only move it one way, right? So if I moved it this way, then all of my layouts are going to keep that adjustment, right? So all we got to do is be able to say, I don't want to move it that way. I want to move it this way. And then all the layouts will keep that adjustment in the nudge, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to ask, just be patient. I think we're going to fix that over time. But the blessing of all of it is to have the 48 channels and use it accordingly. So here's how I do it. It's not perfect by any stretch of the imagination. But if I had a show file that I'm going to go and going to go from 32D to 24D, and I know it, then I'm going to go create a 24D show file and move all these channels down and start it here. I mean, it's a pain in the patoot. Don't get me wrong.
Which is what I did. Yeah. It worked fine. Just took some time. Yeah.
Takes some time. Yeah. Hopefully we'll fix that. I really feel confident that once we get some development resources back, those teams back up and running at full strength at Avid, we'll get some of those problems sorted out, because that hit us right before pandemic shut us down.
Yeah. Thanks for that.
Yeah, sure. That's a great question. I'm sorry I didn't have a better answer, but I know that we are aware of it and going to try to fix that. Gear, I think we're up to you, my friend. We're going to go for another, I don't know, maybe 10 minutes here or so, and then we're going to have to shut it down. But
I have a question relating to automation and how you use snapshot automation.
Okay.
Can you speak a little bit into the strategy that you use when you have a show, you have each song has their individual snapshots with whatever needs to change, and then you halfway through the show you realize that you need to change the EQ on the singer because his throat is gone or whatever. How do you then manage that so that it flows through wherever it needs to flow through? And then, that's the first thing. And then
so you want to be here for another hour? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay, I got it.
No, I want to go to bed. I'm tired.
Yeah, you're the one up late. I'm going to keep you up late now. All right, go ahead. Give us part B of your question there.
No, just do that. I'll take part B afterwards.
Yeah. Okay.
or
right.
maybe I've made a note of it, so it's gone, but I'll find it. Just it was here. It was here. Yes. So do you have an apply all update? So
yes.
yes. And then well that would take care of it. But then let's see, you change the order. Let's say you have a show file. You start off with everything in the place where it's supposed to be, and then next song you just change one thing, and that remains throughout the show. But then you change the order of the songs, and then the changes aren't happening at the time where they should, and you need to go back. It gets messy.
Yeah,
and the explanation here was messy.
I mean, you know. Look, I mean,
what's
the Achilles
your strategy
heel
for surviving this, is basically.
Yeah, the Achilles heel of any automation process is when we get thrown curveballs, right? Okay, now all of a sudden they've just jumped 4 songs ahead in the list, etc. You know, what are the ramifications of that to my recall? Or, okay, we're 4 songs in, the singer's lost his voice. How do I make an adjustment now, right? So there's let's come at this from a couple of different angles first. I'll start with just this premise to kind of get us going here, and I've used this, and we're going to kind of go on the premise here that we're working on a show that is repeating, right? We're in day 1 versus day 10 versus day 400. It's essentially the same show. How do we manage it going forward? Okay, so this is not a one-off that we're talking about here. So usually when I'm going to do this, let me see how I want to show this to you and do it effectively here. So let me do this. Okay. So the first thing I would say to you, if you know you're on a show where you're going to use snapshots, and I mean this for any reason, meaning I may just have a list of snapshots that are song titles, and when I recall them, they are going to do nothing other than put the name of my MP3 onto the USB key, all right? It may do nothing more than that. I can have snapshots that will do that. I can get in, and I suggest, honestly, to guys that are just kind of getting used to snapshots, etc., that they do that. Like if you've got a set list, put that set list in the snapshot list and get into the habit of recalling that snapshot at the beginning or at some strategic time before that song starts, right? Get into the habit of doing that, even if you're recalling nothing on the console, because the automation is only as good as you remembering to hit the recall button. Okay, so that's the first thing. You've got to get the muscle memory going there, right? Now, in the venue system, we operate on this kind of methodology. Store all, recall filtered. Store all, recall filtered. Meaning, every time I hit the store button, it is storing all parameters on the console into the currently loaded snapshot. But what we recall out of that store is filtered, meaning we get to pick what channel, what function, what parameter is going to recall with the snapshot. Okay? So what that means is if I recall, let me just do this. Let's just do a couple of dupes here. This will definitely take us to the end of our time together today. Thank you, Gear, for saving it till the very last thing. That's all right, though. All right, so one amendment to what I just said. When I hit the store button, it will store everything on the console with the exception of plugin parameters. All right. If we're going to have plugin recalls that are going to happen, we need to add those plugins to the snapshot scope in order to make that happen, right? And in the right-hand side here, you can see a list of plugins that I have added. All right. So every time that I hit store now, it's going to store all parameters on the console, including these plugins, right? And now when we go to hit the recall, it's going to recall those parameters on those plugins as well. Okay. Now, can we operate the plugins without the snapshots? Of course you can. Just don't add any to the list. Then they're just manual settings, and they'll stay as long as you leave them alone, right? If you want to go change them, you can. It's just like a piece of gear in an outboard rack at that point, right? So if you want to do that, you can. And there's nothing that says you wouldn't have to. So I'm going to do this just to kind of prove my point here. So we'll start out in a complete manual mode. So I'm going to remove from all snapshots. Sorry, just bear with me here. I'm kind of shooting from the hip here. Okay, so now none of these plugins or none of these snapshots have those plugins in it right now. So right now, even though I'm going to be recalling snapshots, it's a completely manual console, completely manual effects processing. Okay? All right, so let's get to song one. Okay, we've recalled song one. Nothing has changed on the console from sound check. We're sitting exactly where we were at sound check. But once we get to the end of this song, we're going to say, hey, I like that. I'm going to store that. Store. Okay. Now we want to recall snapshot 2. Next song starts, recall snapshot 2. Nothing has changed on the console. It's sitting exactly where we left it at the end of song 1. Why? Because we have nothing scoped. No plugins scoped, no parameters scoped, no channels scoped. At the end of song 2, we're going to say, ooh, boy, I really like what I did there too. Store. Now we've stored everything on the console except for the plugins, right? Go on to song 3. Rinse, lather, repeat. Mix song 3 right from where we left off in song 2. Store if you want to store. I would store. Store in song 3 and off you go. Okay? You follow me so far? Okay. Now, what happens? Yes. What happens if we want, like if in this situation, we'll do this over a couple of different scenarios here. What if the singer loses his voice and we've got to do a dramatic EQ change and level change on the system? Well, no big deal, right? We haven't recalled anything anyway. We're completely in manual mode. But now we're going to make that change. And when we hit store, we've now stored the vocal setting for when he loses his voice in the next snapshot. Let's say you lost it at song 4. I'm just going to recall that and then store it. This is now our EQ change. I ought to actually maybe try to actually emulate this here, but I'll just try to talk through it here first. All right, so now we've got a different EQ stored in song 4 for the vocalist than we do in song 1, 2, 3, and 4, right? Okay. So, but again, nothing at stake, no big deal. We're not recalling anything right there. Now, if we come back tomorrow night, and we start at song 1 and go right back through. Remember, we're operating in manual mode here. So there will be nothing recalling. All right. Now, we could at some point say, well, okay, I've kind of got this together now a little bit. Let me take my drums and add my drums to the scope, and I'm just going to do faders and mutes there, right? So now, actually, I got to do that for all of these snapshots here. I've got to select them all. We're going to add fader and mute recalls for the first 8 channels. So now when I recall snapshot 1, it's going to put those 8 channels, their faders and their mutes, where I had them in song 1 the previous night. If I go to recall song 2 now, it's going to put those 8 drum channels, fader and mute, where I had them in song 2 now. Right? Everybody with me so far? Because remember, all that information was stored in there. We just hadn't decided to recall it yet. Right? Now, what if we get to a point where we say, ooh, I recalled song 3, but I didn't really like where my drums ended up there. I actually prefer where they were in song 1. How do I get them from there to there? This is where we need to do a propagate. And this gets a little messy, but you would go back to song 1, recall the drums. Remember, we're only recalling the drums here. And then you're going to say update snapshot 3, fader, mute, drums. Right? And say update. And now when we recall song 3, it's going to have snapshot 1's drum settings in it. Everybody good there? So if you're going to update something, you got to pick the parameters you're going to update, the faders you're going to update, and the snapshot you want to update it in. Now, what happened if we wanted to say, okay, that's where I want my drums to be for the rest of the night, even if I have them all scoped here. All right, so then we would do update, drums, fader, mute, pick the rest of the night's snapshots, or even pick all snapshots if you want, and go update. Now, as I make my way through the list, those drums are now going to be set where they were in song 1 for all of the drums, right? I've overwritten all of the previously stored fader and mute positions in those songs. Everybody with me? All right, so how about what if we want to do something a little more on the fly, a little more immediate, so we don't have to recall something else and then send it other places? That's where edit mode comes into play, right? So let's say, let's take that singer again, for example, where we said, oh boy, I had to boost a lot more top end on him here. I just need to put that in the rest of my snapshots. Now remember, we're not set up to recall anything on the vocalist yet, but you're just going to make a change to the rest of the snapshots. All right, so in that mode, you would go edit, and now you're going to instigate that change on the EQ. You're going to change it. This is anything you do on the console now is going to be part of this edit. So be careful, because you don't want to throw a lot of other changes at this, right? This would be where you want to do a real-time edit. You're going to go edit, make the change, and then pick the snapshots that you want to send it. And now you've got to decide, do I want to do an absolute edit on those other snapshots, meaning I'm going to overwrite all of it here, all of the position for this vocalist, all of the EQ for this vocalist. Actually, I think I need to do this. No, actually, I don't even need to do that. I'm sorry. This doesn't matter. It's just going to make changes to whatever you touch and change here. And then say absolute or relative. So absolute obviously takes and puts the remaining snapshots at the absolute values that you're at right now on the vocal. If I want to do relative, then it's just going to do a relative change, right? Meaning if I've got 6 dB of gain on the vocalist on the high end here, but the other ones had 2 and 3 dB. Well, if I do relative change, if I add 2 dB to the current setting, it's just going to add 2 dB to all the other stored settings. It's not going to overwrite them. It's just going to add a relative amount of level, right? Now, the place where this falls down with regard to EQ is it doesn't work for frequency. It might work for bandwidth, but I don't think it's only for level, right? This is only a level-dependent change here in absolute or relative. So you can do that in fader positions, gains, thresholds, things like that, right? But that's more of a real-time change there. The thing to remember there is when you're in absolute or relative edit, I'll just do relative here. When you're in absolute or relative edit there, anything you do on the console is going to be part of that change now. So once you go into that mode, be careful what you touch and change. You're only going to want to address the things that you want to address going forward. Places where you could do something like that is maybe by the time you're in the second song, you say, oh man, this snare drum EQ is not going to work for the rest of the set. But really, even that mentality only applies if you have snare drum EQ changes set up to recall throughout the night. If you don't have them set up to recall throughout the night, make your change and just let it ride for the rest of the night, right? So any of this update and edit mode only applies to things that are previously stored that are going to be recalled, right? If it's not going to be recalled the rest of the night, why would you care? You just make the change and ride it out for the rest of the night. Is that making any sense to you there?
Yes, and the question then becomes, you don't change anything except for one song, and then it moves because the set list moves.
Yeah, if you've got it set up to recall, it doesn't matter where you put it in the set list, it'll still recall it.
Yeah, but you don't want it then for the next song, for example.
Is it set up to recall in the next song?
No, but you recall, you have, yes, so let's say you do a change on something in song 2 and you change it back in song 3, but then you start with, you flip song 1 and 2, so you will have to do, so when you do song 2, it is correct, but
I'm with you there.
It doesn't change back on song 1.
Yeah, the way I would do that is you've made the recall. We kind of call this a hangover setting, right? So let's say I've recalled a special EQ on the vocal, and the next snapshot does not have a vocal recall, right? So it keeps the last recalled settings, right? But I need it to not be there. I need it to go back to its previously recalled setting, right? Is that where you're at there?
Yep.
Yeah. So that actually is really easy to do in this architecture. And the way you would do that is recall the snapshot. The carryover EQ is going to be there. Go up and select EQ and select the scope, or select the channel scope. Let's say the one I've chosen here is that vocal. So now if I go channel and EQ and hit recall again, it's going to recall the previously stored EQ there. Right? Because it was already stored there. You haven't stored over it.
No.
You just haven't recalled it. Remember, every time we store, every setting on the console is stored there. So that previous EQ setting is sitting there waiting for you to recall it.
Okay, yeah. The way I was doing it was to have for that song where I knew things were going haywire. I was having a reset cue at the end of the song.
Mm-hmm.
But this sounds just as fun.
Yeah. Now the thing to remember here now is once you recall that EQ on that channel, and you're in that snapshot, then unscope it again.
Yeah.
Right. Because that way the next time you come back, it'll be right again. Right. Now, especially if you put your set list back in order, then everything will be okay. Right. What you wouldn't want to do is recall that odd EQ for the vocal, recall this snapshot, and then at any point store this. Right. You would want to make this change first. You would want to say, oh, I forgot. I got to get back to this EQ on the vocal. Recall, take this out. And now from that point forward, I can store in it again, and I will have kept the original, the desired EQ on the vocal. Right. I'll tell you where this works really good. What really drives home this point, I've done this, kind of teaching this with other guys, is if they inadvertently make a preamp change, because very few guys actually scope preamp changes into their snapshots. They just, they usually set one preamp and let it go and then not scope it. Just say, I'm going to work it. But let's say they've been storing snapshots, as we kind of talked about, and don't realize that the actual stored setting for the preamp is actually in the snapshot. All you've got to do is recall it. So if I make some wild change and go, oh, damn, I just screwed up my preamp gain on the vocal, whatever, for this big elaborate chain that I have. How can I get my preamp gain back? Don't do anything other than go and scope the channel, scope pre, and hit recall. because that stored preamp setting is sitting in that snapshot waiting to be recalled by you. And then same sort of thing. Once you've done that, then unscope those 2 channels and you're back off to the races, right? It'll bring it right back where it was originally stored.
Good.
You with me?
Yep. Yep.
And that's kind of the beauty of store all recall filtered. And how do I know this? Because in the very first days in Venue 1.0, we completely screwed this up. We completely screwed the pooch here. And I did one whole tour with it this way, where we had it. Honestly, it's very similar to how some of the other companies do it, which was store filtered, recall all. Right? Where you're going to select what you're going to store in every snapshot. And there's a part of everybody, I think, where logically you think, that sounds right to me. Why wouldn't I want to do that? But it is the king of all the carryover, settings then. It's like, well, wait a minute. Why am I recalling? Okay, I recalled this. Why is this, or why isn't this changing now? Well, it's like you stored it, but you haven't set it up to recall it. It threw me for a loop big time in the early days. And I, as well as a lot of other mixers, kind of went back to the guys at Avid and said, fellas, we got to change this. This is just creating havoc out here. We need to move to store all, recall filtered. That way we don't have all these hangover settings and all this kind of stuff here. And it honestly, it was work well done. It's served us very, very well over time. So.
Nice. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a great question. That's a perfect open forum question there. All right. Well, we're right on an hour and 30 minutes here, so I'm going to knock it on the head here, fellas. Thank you for making this a success. I hope this format is okay for you. I'll just encourage you, tell other people about this if they've got questions and they want to come in and get it answered. I'll answer it the best way I know how to answer it. If in the future you want me to cover something that's kind of in depth or might take some setup, please send me the scenario in the Squawk Box email box. You can even send me your show file if you want, and I can load it right up here and we can go through the challenge for you if you want to do it. I can load probably just about any show file here, especially once I get my wave system back online. I'll be able to load just about anybody's show file here and actually do some meaningful work on it. So if you want to do that, just send me the show file in the Squawk Box and we'll feature it on the open forum, okay? All right, so, when you talk about us, talk nice, and thank you for showing up. I hope this was helpful to somebody aside from gear, so.
Thank you.
Hey,
I have
Robert,
one more
James
question.
Shaw has his hand up.
Who had his hands up? Oh,
Yes.
yeah. Sorry, I'm having trouble seeing your hand there, James. It's kind of right over a part of your screen that's kind of hides it there. That's right. Go ahead, man. I'll get you in here. Sure.
All right. Real quick, I just wanted to comment on Gary's question. And when I encounter folks that are wondering, how do I start off with automation, whatnot? And I'm like, if it's on or off, in or out, 1 or 0, automate it. If it's something that is not that, like a fader, an EQ, whatnot, like think twice. And if I had something like a guitar channel, he plays a 6-string on one, a 12 on the other, I need to re-EQ the 12 this particular day compared to other days, but then I need to remember what songs have the 12 so I can propagate, etc. I'll more do things like make 2 channels for it.
That's,
the propagate stuff is great, but as far as like when you're mixing the show and then you're like, oh no, I need to make sure this is updated in the other songs, so I just changed it now, so I got to go into update, scope the channels, blah blah blah, and it's like, oh, I just missed a guitar solo. Awesome. I
it's like
divided
anything
into,
it just takes cycles, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it just takes doing it and getting used to the mindset of doing it. Like the update thing, I love using it. I got it set up on function keys where I can update a channel, because here's the challenge with not using update, in my mind anyway. Let's say I recall a snapshot and I make changes. I make my mix changes in the snapshot, but at the end of it, I think, oh man, I love where I have the bass guitar right now. I want to just update it in the rest of the snapshots, right? So I don't have to do this every time the bass recalls. So that's a place to use update, where you just go select, update, or update, select, parameter, fader, boom, done. I mean, you can get really fast at it if you practice at it a little bit. I'll honestly say I rarely do live edits, like absolute or relative edits. I can certainly see situations where I might, but I rarely do that. But I update a lot. I do a lot of updating throughout the night.
I'd love to see something, I don't know if it's a fantastic idea, but something along the lines of, we have settings for EQs that we can store So you can recall presets that you have for EQs on any channel.
Oh, you can do that now.
Yeah, no, but I mean to then be able to do something where you say this preset, snare EQ1, is locked to these snapshots. So if I change snare EQ1 on any one of the snapshots that uses that, and then I've said this is your preset, then if I update it and save it, any other, just like if we automated, if we were doing MIDI changes for our effects, and you got your large haul and you go into a gig and the next day you're like less large haul and you hit save, every snapshot that'll recall large haul will recall your new large haul sort of thing.
So you want it to do that? Am I
making sense? Yeah, for the example, if I had a guitar player, he's got a 6, he's got a 12, I changed the EQ on the 12 for a particular day because he put new strings on it or whatever. I could go through and update all and be like, okay, which songs does he play the 12 on? Select all those, do the update. And that's totally cool, and especially cool making an event to do it quick for you. But if I saved the EQ for that 12 has 12 string guitar, and then in some sort of way, I'm talking theoreticals here, could then say, hey, 12 string guitar is locked to the EQ, is locked to these snapshots. So if I update it and save it, resave it as something new, I say, it needs a little bit of this. I hit save. Any snapshot that uses that preset for that EQ will automatically change. So just like when I was controlling reverbs with MIDI, if I changed the snare verb that day.
I got to tell you, what you're saying, though, is almost the same amount of work, regardless of how you do it.
Well, no, because all I got to do is hit save on the preset, and then it automatically, any song that uses that preset will now have the new settings for your preset. So all
I see
I
what you're saying. So lock it as a
yeah. Just like when we were controlling MIDI, controlling our effects, it's just recalling presets. Yeah. And if I change the preset, every time it recalls that preset, it's going to recall what I last saved it as.
Yeah. It's a whole nother layer of there's actually a term for it.
Yeah. How do you lock it the preset to the snapshot? You got to deal with.
It's locking to a library is what it's doing, right?
Yeah. And the mixer I'm working on has that function, so I
believe the Digico does something like that, right?
And theater mode, sort of.
Yeah, it's kind of a theater mode kind of thing. Yeah.
Yes, theater mode, and also the Allen Heats do that. The inexpensive ones.
That's probably a drift over from all the Digico, the shared development with Digico. I'm sure. So yeah, we've considered that. Honestly, we've looked at it. We'll probably do it at some point, I would think, once we get some development back. I mean, especially as you start to see S6L creep into more and more and more theater, if we get a bigger foothold there, the situation will just demand that we do that. So yeah, I'm sure we'll do it. It's used much more there than it is in music production, for sure.
It's also,
but, I would say to you, as an alternative to this, it's not an absolute for it. But one thing you could absolutely do is have an EQ set up. Let's say it's called New String Day for the 12 string or whatever, where you could store that EQ, right? And then have that be the only thing recalled in a snapshot, and have it be a momentary snapshot. Okay? So you could say, okay, it's New String Day. Every time, you would have to do this manually if you're not willing to update the snapshots. But every time I get to that song, I'm going to press the Y button on that channel, and it's going to load that EQ. I mean, that would be a manual per song if you're not willing to do the update, but at least you could do it that way.
Yeah, that's totally another way. Right now, currently, if I had to do something like that, I would just double patch the channel, and one channel would be 6 and the other's 12.
Yeah, honestly, that might be the easier way to do it.
And then I don't have to worry about, I don't even have the EQ and scope. Yeah.
Yeah. We're so channel rich anymore. Why not, right?
Totally.
But, you touched upon something really important in the whole concept of automation, and it's important to discern these two things. I think when we're talking automation, is that we're talking about snapshot automation, right? Not runtime automation. We're talking about snapshot. And in snapshot, the way I've already started to teach it to guys that are just coming into it is to say, treat that snapshot just like your A2. It is your A2. Okay, so if you said to your A2, when we get to this song, I need you to turn this fader down and mute these two faders, etc. Right? I'm going to give you some action to do. All right. So we get to the song, your A2 does it. Fantastic. It's going to stay that way until you tell your A2 to take it out and put it back, or until you tell that A2 to take it and move it somewhere else. Right? It's not just going to automatically come back when I recall the next song, unless I've told the automation to do that, to put it back. Right? So treat it like a person. Treat it like it's going to do exactly what you tell it to do every time, right? You got to start thinking like the computer a little bit there. Michael, go ahead. I'll let you be the last word here, dude, and then I got to run.
Okay. Just two quick things. Hold on, there we go. One, are they going to put out Venue for Windows at all, ever?
Venue for Windows. Venue is Windows.
Okay, I thought it was Mac only.
No, it's Windows
Mac,
only.
Not Mac, but or Mac is what I meant. I'm sorry.
No, are they going to ever put it out for Mac? Is that what you mean? I'd say very doubtful. It would be a huge amount of coding work, and it would only serve standalone software. That's the only thing it would serve. So at this point, I'm just going to be frank with you. I doubt that we're going to do it anytime soon. We'll just rely on people to use emulators on their Macs to be able to do show file builds, etc. I mean, I've been using it in parallels for as long as I can remember. So, I just don't think we're going to prioritize it. There's too many other things we want to get done, and we work on a shared resources model.
It just seems odd to me because Pro Tools, you can get that on Mac all day.
Pro Tools is a Mac application, and Macintosh is the engine.
Right.
In this a Windows computer is the engine. It's not a Mac computer.
I get it. Just anyhow, the other thing is,
I mean, the flip side of it is, I mean, I've had people ask us this a ton of times in the early days of it, for sure. Why didn't you do Mac OS for Venue? It's like, name me one product that is not an Apple product that runs Mac OS. There are none.
I keep wanting to say Midas, but I'm not 100% sure of that.
That's Linux. That's not Mac. That's not iOS.
Okay.
So that's the deal. I mean, and in Pro Tools, obviously you're using a Macintosh computer, so it can run that iOS, right? All other products are not going to be that way.
Then the other thing that I had was, how about we do a class on MIDI?
On MIDI? Oof. Okay. Well, I could certainly do it. I mean, I'm not the sharpest hack in the room or in the box on MIDI for sure. Certainly not in this day and age. I've been away from it for a long time out of the context of what does MIDI mean for Venue, but I could certainly cover that one. How deep do you want to go?
Yes.
And I'm probably not your guy. I'll just be honest with you. I'm probably not your guy. I mean, maybe I could recruit somebody in to do it. I'm not opposed to doing that. Might take a little prep time to get it, but
there's a new standard too, isn't there? I think I saw in one of my briefs go by this past year that there's a new.
Yeah, there's MIDI 2.0. Yeah. MIDI's, I mean, that's a pretty amazing story, MIDI, when you think about it now. I mean, to have a musical instruments control standard that came out in the 80s, man. I mean, the early 80s, and didn't go to 2.0 until just a couple of years ago. I mean, that is a spectacular run for something like that. And think about how many products that was adopted into over 25 plus years, 30 years, Amazing run.
Yeah, AES November 81 is when it came out.
That sounds right.
At the Waldorf, of course.
I remember when it came out, man. I mean, everybody, all the keyboard players, everybody I was with, just like, oh, you aren't going to believe what's happening right now. This is unbelievable. And they were right. It was pretty unbelievable. So. But I sure lost a lot of hair over it. I'll tell you that, man. Doing tons of SysX MIDI stuff in the 80s with effects processing. I mean, I had it set up with my front of house rigs at one point where at the push of a button on a patch bay, one of these little digital patch bays, I could pull all the effects presets from every unit in the rack and store it on a Mac SE. It was pretty cool. Way ahead of its time for the time. So.
Yep.
Now, why I needed to do that at the end, I don't know. I probably still got those cards sitting around with those presets on them somewhere. Who knows, man? Who knows? All right, my friends, I got to pull the ripcord here. Sorry to say. Thank you for hanging in there. Thanks for keeping us talking today. Much appreciated. Like I said, spread the word about it. We'll try to do one of these every 3-4 labs, something like that. Think about things you want to talk about. Think about things you want to get in here and see, and I'll try to accomplish that for you. All right. And on that note, I'll let you guys go. Thanks so much for showing up. We'll see you guys later.
Hey, Michael, dude. Oh.